Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, according to market reports, June is the peak month to buy and sell a house here in Pittsburgh. Maybe that's something you're considering, but the process can feel really overwhelming. How do you find an agent or a price range? How do disclosures work? Does a Pittsburgh potty actually count as a bathroom? And what the hell is hand money? I'm here with someone to demystify the entire home buying process. It's Monday, June 26th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with Jessica Baker. She's a Pittsburgh realtor. Jessica, thank you so much for doing this for us.
You are so welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
I know that summer is typically home buying season, like everywhere, but how does this year in Pittsburgh compare to others?
Oh, that is a great question. So this year, if you haven't heard, is a little bit trickier than others past because interest rates are higher. So that's really causing a bit of an uproar for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of people who have sort of left the market and just decided to rent for another year. I mean, we went from rates being like below 3% to now they're at like 6.8, and
Yeah. It's like the highest it's been since the early 2000s. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And so we've just really been spoiled with such low interest rates. So it's really difficult. But, when you think about that huge jump in rates, people's budgets have sort of been cut almost in half, so that's a big problem and kind of causing people some consternation when they're thinking, do I really love this house this much, for this type of interest rate?
How much does my love worth to me today?
Yeah.
Well, how does buying and selling in the Pittsburgh market compare to other cities? Because, we hear how livable we are as a city, how our home prices are not as nuts as they are other places. But like, if you've checked Zillow at any point in the last 4 or 5 years, you know that the numbers are just astronomical.
Yeah, it's really insane. I mean, I do always say, and this seems to kind of track, like even through the 2008 crisis, which I got into real estate in after that. So I got into real estate in 2011. But whenever that happened, we didn't have those high highs that a lot of, surrounding markets did, like New York and DC. And of course, anything on the West Coast. So we remained kind of more steady. And I feel like that's sort of what happened to us here, like during the craziness of 2020, 2021, when prices, you would hear people like, oh, my friend's cousin paid $150,000 more for a house in Washington, D.C. Like we didn't really have that. I mean, we did have it, but, just on a smaller scale because we're Pittsburgh. So I feel like we've seen like growth and we've seen insanity, but not in these markets that, we sort of share on this side of the country. Like we're not like New York, we're not like DC. We are a little bit more moderate, I think.
Okay. Well, so break it down for us. If someone feels like they are ready to buy a home, what is the first step? And then steps 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so the first step is you call me and
love a sales pitch.
Yeah, no, but really like the first thing is find an agent. So, get an agent, sort of think about, what's important to you in an agent. Are they similar to you? Are they familiar with, the north part of the city, the south part of the city, or, what are the things that matter to you? And then I always tell people that Instagram is a really amazing way to find agents, or Facebook. But I think that that's a really good way to see kind of like an agent's portfolio and their style and their personality.
That's interesting. I feel like I look for like hairstylists on Instagram. It's not occurred to me to look for like a real estate agent.
Yeah, exactly. You can find out a lot, and you can see if they post stuff just kind of about, their day to day and get a sense of sort of their vibe, or if they're just posting stuff that's like, from their brokerage that all the agents post at the same time. You can kind of see a little bit more of them. I think you have an opportunity to. So it's a good place to find lots of different people.
Yeah. Well, So how do you like how important are like vibes with realtors? Like, I worked with someone once who put my info into a database. It made the recommendations, and I just called her if I saw something I liked. But I have friends that said that like their person was super proactive. They made recommendations. They introduced them to neighborhoods that weren't even on their list, and they loved that style. So like I don't know, how do you find the right one?
I feel like, I always start whenever I have a new client meeting, like, let's say somebody finds me on Instagram and then we have a call. I feel like you can tell a lot from that phone call, from both sides, right? Like I can tell a lot about what type of buyers they are, if they're, hesitant, maybe they're not ready and they're really saying they want to do this now, but maybe they should maybe think about it in a year or
Oh
whatever.
my God, that there's a level of therapy there that's involved. I love it.
Yes, yes. We do always joke and say that like you put your therapist hat on sometimes.
Oh,
But yeah, so there is some of that. And then I think, it goes both ways, right? So then the client can say like, oh, I really felt like I connected with her and, or, oh, it didn't really seem to work. We didn't really jive too well. So I think that matters a lot because this is like the biggest purchase most people will make in their life. So, you want somebody that you can trust, that you feel comfortable with going and kind of holding your hand, so to speak, through this.
yeah. Pittsburghers, I feel like, are uniquely like lifers, like we don't just make this big purchase like a lot. We make the big purchase once or twice
Yeah,
because we're
right.
very committed,
Right.
especially to like neighborhoods, right? So like, do you find that a lot of people come into this and they're like, you know what, I want to live here and only here, and you must help me find a spot here.
Yes, yes, I have that a lot. So that does happen quite often. And I will tell you, a lot of times people do not end up there, right? So they'll
Yeah.
come in and they'll be like, I want to be here and this is it. And then you'll be like, well, you could get more house for your money if you looked here, So I
Hmm.
think that's the interesting thing about Pittsburgh is, sometimes people will come in like, I have to be in Mount Lebanon, and then they end up with something in the north side.
Yeah.
It's just funny how, you come in with these preconceived notions, but when you really, I think a lot of it is because it's where people are familiar with and where they're comfortable with, where they grew up or where they always wanted to grow up, when they were a kid.
Yeah.
And I think, with like 90 neighborhoods in the city of Pittsburgh, I think being able to sort of have an open mind and explore, a lot of times you can really find, more. I don't know. A lot of times the scenario is you get more house for the money, right? If you kind of expand your search. So,
Yeah. Is it true that you'll get more house for the money if you're willing to go to the suburbs, or is that just an urban legend?
no, not necessarily because the suburbs are sort of have exploded as well.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So everywhere's crazy right now, and in an interesting way. But yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of what happens is we see people who live in the city. They either stay in the city and they're committed to it, or when they have kids, a lot of people move out of the city and they choose the suburban life. So, things go in waves like that, right? So I feel like there's always going to be that, people say, oh, I want more yard, or I want more space, or I need more bedrooms or whatever. And I want a certain school district. So we do see that, every year. But I think that, I'm a city girl at heart, and I've always told people like I'm going to be taken out of my house in a pine box. Like we're not moving. Uh,
You have a very nice house in Brighton Heights. I can see why you'd feel that way. You
thank
worked hard for it.
Thank you, thank you. But yeah, no, so it's not necessarily true. No, whenever, you're looking for something and you're trying to save money and get more house, the suburbs is not necessarily the answer. I would say maybe, a neighborhood in the city that's not hasn't blown up like a Lawrenceville type of thing.
At what point in the process do people usually start talking about price range? Because I feel like a lot of us will pick a neighborhood before we talk about price, and then we're like, oh, okay, not there then.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much it's like the order of operations is like find an agent and then get pre-approved. And within the getting pre-approved is like figure out your budget.
Yeah, yeah. The pre-approval process is really like, it's humbling. You say, I think that I can handle this much money. And they're like, do you though?
Yes, exactly. And so, yeah, that's number two. I always say that's sort of like your ticket to ride. Once you get that pre-approval, then you're in good shape. But we say that early because there have been more than, on one occasion, people are like, I can afford this. And then, right, you find out you can't, or I have to bring this much to close. It's good to know that at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to someone who maybe thinks that I can do it on my own? I don't need an agent. Maybe I can save a little money.
Yeah, so you know what the funny thing is that a lot of people don't know is when you buy in the state of PA, you don't actually pay the agent. You don't pay that commission. It's the seller that pays. So we hear about, 6%, 7%. It's the seller that pays that percentage, and then it gets split between the buyer's agency and then the seller's agency, or the listing agent's brokerage. So when you're a buyer, there's really relatively no cost to you. You do have to pay generally like a broker fee at closing that's like $500. But when you're a buyer, it's sort of like the odds are stacked in your favor.
That is brand new information, Jessica. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
Well, so some of those sticky details that can come up when you are buying a house, I feel like it's so often in like a disclosure or an inspection, and it can help to have somebody kind of navigate you through some of that. But I want to talk about like, that Pennsylvania specific detail. Are there weird things that come up specifically in like the Pittsburgh market or in Pennsylvania that other places just don't have to deal with?
You mentioned it earlier, but the Pittsburgh potty is like obviously first that comes to mind,
Do you get to actually count that as a bathroom, or must
Okay.
it have like a sink or something by like law?
This is a great question. Okay. And real estate agents are divided on it. I would much rather, like, if it's just like a toilet in a room with a door, I do not list it when I list properties. I would much rather people go downstairs and be like, oh, bonus, right? And be pleasantly surprised rather than list it as a half bath and people are looking on the first floor like, where's the half bath? Where's the half bath? And then they go, oh, it's just a Pittsburgh potty.
It's just this gross thing in the basement.
Right. So it's all in how you present it, I think. So if it has like a laundry sink right outside, I think a lot of people are more apt to say like half bath, but I'm like kind of a stickler for it. And I've had people like sellers who are like, you need to list this. And I'm like, listen, just trust me. It's better if we don't. And then people will be happy when they come see it,
Yeah, I feel like I tried to make a little list for myself of like ones that like were new learnings for me when I was like kind of coming into the Pittsburgh housing market. One of them, for example, was mine subsidence insurance.
Oh,
Did not realize that that was a thing, but most of the city of Pittsburgh was built on what had been mines at various points.
Yes. And this is just a really funny story, but I had a house that my buyers were interested in buying, and we asked the seller, like, is it public sewer or is it a septic tank? And they couldn't answer us. And we put a sewer camera down and we just determined that they were just dumping their sewage into a mine that was under the house.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Disclosures and inspections disclosures specifically are hilarious documents because it's kind of amazing how little some people know about the house that they've lived for 2 to 20 years,
And these people were like, we don't know. We've never had a problem. It just goes away. My people did not buy that house, just FYI.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so another one. I heard once that in Pennsylvania, it's required to have a closet to call something a bedroom. Is that true?
So no, that's not true. In the Pittsburgh market, this is sort of like the Wild West, because there have definitely been houses where it's like there's a room and it's perfectly sized for a bedroom. And, I'll tell people like, just leave a wardrobe here, for the new buyers. I mean, in new construction, absolutely. But when these houses were built in like 1890, 1910, like they didn't prioritize that type of stuff. I mean, they did. They had a chifforobe, and that was it. So in the city, I feel like we're a little bit more like, we'll still call that a bedroom.
Okay. What about the homestead exemption? Because I feel like that's one specifically that people are like, wait, what is this? How does it work? Can you explain it to people?
Yeah, the homestead exemption is amazing. So if it's your primary residence and you fill out this one little form once ever, you get $18,000 off of your taxes, off of your assessed value. So, if you're assessed at $118,000 and you fill out the homestead exemption, they base your taxes actually on $100,000. And you can look this up on the county website too to see if you have it on your property or if you don't, because it'll show a difference in the two values. It'll show like, oh, you actually, you have that on there.
But I think it covers almost all of Allegheny County, right?
Yeah, it's all of Allegheny County.
Okay, cool. What about hand money? Because that one was a brand new concept to me when I moved to Pittsburgh.
Hand money. So it's really funny because like people call it different things depending on where they are in the country. So like hand money, earnest money, good faith money.
All of it means grease the wheels.
Yeah. So what I always tell people is, so whenever you get an offer accepted on a house, the seller is taking their house off the market for you. That's their skin in the game. What's your skin in the game, right? Because if you don't have any, you could just be like, never mind. I had a bad dream. I don't want to buy this house. So the hand money sort of keeps you in the deal. So the other thing is the more hand money, the more serious you are as a buyer. So, generally we say 1% of the purchase price. So a $300,000 house would have $3,000 in hand money. Although when things get competitive, I've seen a $300,000 house where people put $10,000 in hand money. And so hand money is not like a gift to the seller. It's just your money that goes into escrow and it hangs out there with everybody else's hand money, at a brokerage. And then at closing, it comes off of your bottom line at the end of the day.
So it still goes towards that purchase price, but it just shows that like, hey, I'm serious. Please take me seriously. Please consider my offer.
Yes. And, for example, like on the selling side, like if I have a listing and somebody comes in with $1,000 hand money and it's, a $350,000 house, I would say, okay, and we're going to ask for an increase in hand money, because at that point, like $1,000, you don't feel like that's necessarily enough to keep somebody in a deal through the end, right? What if they found a house that they liked better while they're under contract? They could be like, we lose $100,000, we lose $1,000 and, that's it. Oh, well, right? So that's why, the more the better, or the more serious you appear to a seller.
How much do you advise that people typically give or have on hand?
It depends. Like if there are no other offers.
If 1% is the bare minimum, like what's the smart amount?
Well, if there are no other offers, I would try to get past, and it's my buyer, with the 1%.
But what if you don't know if there's other offers?
Well, normally you do know.
Okay.
So that's a good thing because they're always trying to get you to increase and do your highest and best offer, right? So normally you'll get some kind of notification of that.
Highest and best offer is such a triggering phrase to me still.
I think for everybody it is. Yes. So if that's the case, then, you have more than one offer. I would say whatever you're comfortable with. I say, anywhere from 5 to 10 would be amazing type of thing.
Yeah. Well, so let's zoom out just a little bit. Are there types of houses or even hot areas that are selling better right now here in Pittsburgh, or should be? You can also go with an outside pick.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, there definitely are. There are places that are always going to be hot. Like, basically I just kind of group all of the East End, like Squirrel Hill, Regent Square, Highland Park, like that whole, in Lawrenceville, like the whole East kind of corridor is just wild, right?
Yeah, where are the hidden gems, like the overlooked neighborhoods that you can still get a decent house in a good neighborhood?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So, okay, I would say like I'm partial to the north because I live in the north. So like I love Brighton Heights. I love Bellevue, Avalon.
There's a lot of love for the north side in CityCast Pittsburgh.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, Avalon, Emsworth, like sort of that 65 corridor has not really totally blown up if you want to still be close to the city.
Emsworth is so cute. I used to go on walks there during the pandemic. So cute.
Oh, I just love it. I love it. And, people really like it too because it's still Avonworth School District, which a lot of people think that's just Ben Avon. And Ben Avon has sort of exploded, but you can still get an Avonworth School District if you're in Emsworth.
And lots of mature trees. I learned that is my catnip, mature trees.
Tell me about it. It's such a dream.
And I know you took on a massive home renovation yourself. We'll link those social handles so people can look at it. But do you think that people should be worried at all about how old our houses are here in Pittsburgh? Because it can be daunting.
No, so my house was built in 1892-ish, and we took our house down to the studs, so I kind of was a big part of that process of like putting it all back together. And so I think, seeing the age of housing stock here, it's just, the only thing is when people come from other markets that are not used to this, it's a little bit scary. But for the most part, I feel like, we work through stuff with your home inspector, and, contractors here kind of know what they're dealing with. Sure, could you open something up and get into more than you were expecting? Yes, absolutely. But we try to do everything we can throughout the process to prevent that from happening, to keep people informed about what the actual condition is of the house. But no, I think the other thing that's unique that I don't know that we all realize is how much like brick we have here. Like if you go elsewhere, like my husband's from the Midwest. So like if you go out there, or if my in-laws come back here, they're always like, just all these houses are made of bricks. It's unbelievable, And so I think that like there's a lot of stuff that we take for granted that, were really good building materials back in, early 1900s when these houses were built, that are just, they've really done a great job withstanding the test of time.
And I guess just really briefly, do you have any overall advice maybe for buyers or sellers who are trying to decide, am I ready? Is this a good time?
Yes. So I think that one of my big pieces of advice, and especially that I tell my buyers, is if you are looking and you are just going after the stuff that's totally done and totally turnkey, everybody is looking for that too. Like everybody wants everything to just be done. If you are willing to tackle an ugly bathroom or, paint kitchen cabinets yourself, there are a lot of ways that like you can snag a house that maybe, isn't cosmetically totally updated and redone, but you can definitely get more often than not a better price. And then, either do the work over time or do the work yourselves. And, I'm a big fan of like a bathroom refresh light. You can definitely redo aspects of a bathroom for under $1,000. You don't have to spend 15 grand and rip everything out.
I'm going to try to take that last statement to heart. Jessica Baker is a Pittsburgh realtor. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
You're so welcome. This has been so great.
A little more news before you go. Pennsylvania is considering a trio of bills to expand its medical cannabis program. One would make it available for any doctor to prescribe for any condition. Another would drop annual medical card renewals and allow for edibles. And the third would let growers sell directly to patients, farm to table style. It passed the Senate committee with bipartisan support, but now needs the full Senate approval, which is controlled by Republicans. If that's successful, it'll head to the Democratic-led House. Governor Josh Shapiro told the AP that he's in favor of it. And did you know that Pittsburgh is the only city in the U.S. where every professional sports team shares the same color palette? The Pirates are paying homage to our past and present with a new set of black and gold uniforms. The style is by Nike, and it's super detailed. There's yellow fabric, and inside it you can see like an inverted Y. They say that's for our three rivers. An asteroid, which is actually a steel mark, like what you'd see in the Steelers logo, and a check, which the designers say is a play on our city seal. I gotta be honest, I don't see that one, but I like the spirit of it. There's also this great hokey video narrated by Wiz Khalifa celebrating it all.
The mills may be gone, but we still standing, creating, innovating, but with the same old work ethic. Maybe it's in the water of those three rivers, or maybe it's the DNA of the city, of the people, of the colors. It's in our vein. We bleed black and gold. Behold, the new steel.
It's so corny. The Buccos are unveiling the new uniforms at home tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and you can look for the City Connect block party before the game on Federal Street starting at 4:30. There'll be a DJ, food, games, and the players themselves. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're liking the show, please tell a friend, give us a rating, a nice review, and make sure you're subscribed to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city.
Black and green, I think, is my favorite of the old school bathrooms.
Like black and green in the same room?
Yeah. Yeah. And the Pepto-Bismol pink I've seen a lot with like maroon. Mustard is really common. That was just like everybody redid that. That's what someday we'll all look back and be like, white kitchens. Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that I ever needed like rust orange tile in a bathroom. Like, what are people thinking?
Well, you know what? Somebody asked me this once and they're like, why do you think Pittsburghers paint their houses such bright colors inside? And I was like, maybe because we have so many gray days.
You know what? That's wise.